world where digital information is the one which is running this world. Now I'm just going to minimize everybody so that we can focus on the screen. Yeah. Now if you look at this window, what do you see here? You see that we are living in a fast moving world. I remember, sorry, I got this date wrong. Today is 23rd June. Let me just fix this one. Okay. I'm just telling you, incidentally, the last meeting we had where I spoke at the Bangalore branch study, this one was incidentally exactly 14 months ago. And now, if you look at, we had this era, we used to call this as BC, AD, and that's how we used to call. Now we have to call this the new era, we have to call it as BC, which is before Corona. Now, currently we are in 20, it still looks like I'm still 1 year behind. Okay. So it looks like last 1 year, things have not changed and not moved much. And we are stuck in the old. Okay. I remember I made the presentation 23rd April 2020 for the Bangalore branch. And that is a 2 hour, and that's one of the first CPE meetings we did virtually. Now it's 14 months past the last CPE meeting which I present for Bangalore. And a lot of things have changed. Like I said, first thing we saw is we had this before Corona. So you can say 2019 was the BC. And now we had 2020, 2021, we are in Corona, IC, we can, and now probably 2022, we will be after Corona, will become AC. The most important distinguishing factor, especially in this age of Corona, is we have to learn to be more productive. And information technology is a key differentiator. We know, especially in this Corona age and because of the impact of COVID, the uncertainty of life. We know that we are all tenants on this planet Earth. We knew earlier that we are here for a limited period. Our date of coming and date of departure was not determined by us. Somebody determined sent us here, and we are supposed to make a difference to the world. Now, this Corona has actually made us realize this much more strongly, that we are here as a tenant on this planet Earth. And it's important that we should not focus only on earning our livelihood, but focus on how we can create livelihood and leave a legacy based on a professional knowledge and skill set. Being the knowledge workers, having intellectual capital, having spent so much of time in educating ourselves, we need to see how best we can make the best use of our knowledge. Talking about knowledge, I remember long back, I'm not sure whether it's 2 decades back or so, I heard a lecture by Swami Chinmayananda. He used to give 2 types of lectures, one in the morning and one in the evening. The first, in the evening, it used to be a general lecture for the public where we used to talk about the Bhagavad Gita. In the morning, it used to be on the Upanishads. In one of the morning lectures of the Upanishad, he talked about the 4 types of learners. And he said, the 4 types of learners are the 4 stages of learning. He said long back when we were in the Gurukula system, where the master used to sit below the tree, and that's why they call it Upanishad, sit below the tree, and the students used to sit around the master and listen to his discourse. So the master used to give a brief lecture. So when he started, let's say one day he said Tattvamasi, which means the first stage of learning, he said, is the master states the truth. Now, listening to this, the students contemplate, and some of them get enlightened and then go away because that is enough for them. Tattvamasi means thou art that. So they realize that they are the Atman and they leave away because they have learned whatever is required. Still students remain. Then the second, the master or the guru explains the truth, which means he elaborates and explains in detail. There are some more students who get enlightened, go away. In the third stage, there are still students left. The master illustrates the truth by giving examples. There are some students who get realized based on this. In the fourth stage, the guru for the leftover students demonstrates the truth by giving the practices and the rituals. Now, in the Zoom era, most of us have been attending various types of meetings. Now, we also have got various types of learners who, looking at the slide in the first few minutes, they decide they've already become enlightened about the subject and they leave. Second, we have some people who will stay for 10-15 minutes, look at what is the teacher, the presenter is talking about. And after that, they have, based on the explanation, they've already understood. They don't need to listen to the balance lecture. And the third, they are a little more patient. They want to illustrate. They want to look for the illustrations, examples, and see how they can use it. And the fourth, the final one, are the ones who actually look at demonstrating. So they look at how do I learn practical examples so that they can practically apply it. I'm sure all of you are belonging to one of these categories. You decide to which category you belong. But my presentation today on this topic of how to enhance effectiveness of assurance or compliance with powerful analytics with case studies is actually modeled on this four. So if you have understood this first slide, this is where I'm talking about what is effectiveness of assurance and compliance, where I talked about technology being a key differentiator, which is going to differentiate whether you're going to survive or thrive in this digital age. So you already got enlightened, you can leave. Now, for those who want to look for explanation, I'm going to talk about the explanation. We'll go back to the fundamentals and I'll talk about the agenda. The focus of my presentation is initially, I would like to cover these four topics briefly. And then on the last topic, which is actually the topic where we have a demo, I'd like to spend a maximum amount of time, probably 50 to 60% of the time, I'd like to spend on the demo, showing you how you can actually perform powerful data analytics using various techniques. So these are the four broad areas I would like to cover. First, we'll go back to the fundamentals, understand from the standards of the frameworks, what is assurance services. Second, we'll understand how can we make assurance effective. And this is using technology. What are the concepts? What are the tips and traps, techniques which you can follow? Third, we'll understand the role of data analytics. And four, this is where we'll spend significant amount of time, where we look at data analytics, where I'm going to share with you some of the practical examples and techniques of how you can perform data analytics and enhance the effectiveness of your assurance process. Now let's go to the first topic, where you look at how do we perform assurance services. Let's go back to the concept, understand how do we perform assurance services from the point of the framework. So this is what I said. First thing, we need to go back to fundamentals and ask ourselves, what is the role we want to play as a chartered accountant? This is where they say, know thyself. What makes your practice unique? What value do you deliver? What capabilities are inevitable to you? And then based on that, you should be clear about what is the mission or purpose of your practice or your life. So this is very important, that considering now the COVID era where we know the uncertainties of life, we should look at life from a bigger perspective, from a larger perspective, from a holistic perspective, and look at how we can contribute for whatever limited time we are here on this planet Earth. Now that's where we need to understand the 6 questions which can be applied to our life, to our practice. Now here I'm going to ask the 6 questions of who, what, when, where, how, and why to assurance services. Let's start with the fundamental question. We are all auditors, as chartered accountants. This is the primary function we perform. Who is an auditor, or what is an auditor? An auditor is a professional who helps determine if the organizations and the business follow the rules, operate with integrity, and accurately present financial information. The auditor is supposed to play a valuable role in the financial markets. That's why you have most of the cases, the compliance of the statutory audits, as they work to verify company's financial health by checking the accuracy of its financial statements. You must have heard the famous statement where they say chartered accountants have the second most powerful signature after the President of India, because once a CA signs, it is accepted by regulatory authorities. So here, if you see, what an auditor does is he follows the rules, which means there are certain rules. Let's say if you're doing a GST audit, or you're doing a tax audit, or you're doing a company audit, you look at what are the rules which are applicable to the company, and based on that, you actually verify and validate the data. There's a context in which you need to remember. This is what assurance is all about. Now let's go back to the fundamentals and look at what is assurance services all about. They say assurance services are objective examination of evidence, which means we look at the evidence for the purpose of providing an independent assessment. And there are 3 aspects. One is the risk management strategies and practices, the management control frameworks and practices, and the information used for decision making and reporting. So depending on the type, the objective, and the scope of the audit, This will vary. But there's one fundamental factor you need to remember. It requires, whatever be the type of assurance, it requires examination of evidence. Now we need to ask this question, in what format is this evidence available? Let's say I went back 2 decades ago. What are the format or forum in which this evidence is available? What is the format or form or the evidence which is available now? Because they say audit is all about asking intelligent questions. So we need to ask, what is the evidence based on the information we have for the assurance, based on the scope and objective of the assurance. So just remember this point, one key point here, we'll look at examination of evidence. Now the question is, how do we examine evidence? What is the evidence which is available to us? Let's go to the next point. Let's look at the definition of assurance services itself. They say it's an objective examination of evidence for the purpose of providing an independent assessment on risk management, control, or governance process for the organization. And depending on the type of the audit, if I'm looking at, let's say, internal audit, the scope would be as defined by the management. And if it's a statutory audit, the scope would be as declared by the statute. Depending on the type, the scope and objective of the assurance will vary. Now, for example, here we say the financial audit scope objectives could be different. If the performance audit would be different. If the compliance, system security, and due diligence engagements. In all these cases, the fundamental overflowing factor is there is going to be an examination of evidence. Second, there is a purpose which is going to be served by performing independent assessment. This independent assessment could be pertaining to the risk management of the enterprise, pertaining to the controls which are available in the enterprise, or pertaining to the governance process for the enterprise. For example, if I'm doing a company audit for whom the IFC is applicable, in that case, I have to look at not only the control framework, I also have to look at the governance framework. And not only that, I also have to look at the risk management strategy of the enterprise. So the objective examination, we should be able to examine this data objectively. This evidence based, which means we need to have the evidence, we need to evaluate the evidence, and there is an independent assessment. Now remember these two factors, examination, evidence once again comes in. I'm going to repeat this again and again, and we're going to look at it again if you want to improve the effectiveness. Now independence is a factor. We know that independence, we do not compromise. What is important is how do we examine and what is the evidence we use. This is what we need to look at, and this is what we need to look at from the perspective of what happened in the past and what we can do now and what will happen in the future. Now let's look at the what. Now if you look at what assurance provides with the internal auditor through audit engagements. Why is it required? Provides management confidence on the soundness of the management process within the organization, which means we are looking at the internal control process within the organization and provide an assurance to the management. What we provide primarily through assurance is an assurance to the management. They also provide validation by guiding the management in determining where the risk areas are and provide recommendations for remedying the risks. In the case of compliance audit, we will be looking at the compliance factors and look at whether they're complied and they're not complied, what are the factors for compliance and what are the risks of compliance and the implication of compliance, and we report it in our audit report. Now let's look at the how. How is assurance performed? Based on the results we do at assessment, right, in terms of understanding the business processes, in terms of understanding the organization structure, the technology deployed, the policy and procedures which are there within the organization, and considering the scope and objective of the audit, we look at what are the risk assessment, and then based on that, we should be able to evaluate. These are two key terms we need to look at: adequacy and the effectiveness of controls encompassing the organization's governance, operations, and information systems. So primarily, we're looking at the adequacy, which means the sufficiency, and the effectiveness. Effectiveness would mean the result orientation of how the controls are implemented. Now, when you look at the controls, for example, it's a regulatory audit, we look at controls pertaining to the application of the regulatory framework. For example, if we are looking at, let's say, a GST audit, the controls would be to check whether all the sales, the tax rate has been correctly applied, the tax has been collected and remitted to the government on time. Now, here also got various things where we look at reliability and integrity of the financial and operational information, effectiveness and efficiency of the operations, safeguarding of the assets, and the compliance with laws, regulations, contract. These are the broad perspectives of what we do or look at in assurance. Now, if you look at the IAF function or the internal audit function, They conduct internal audit in an effective, efficient manner with risk-based plan that address the scope of the engagement. Now, how do we assess the risk? Now, if you look at a manual environment and you look at a computerized environment, there is an enormous increase in the type of the risk. Now, we should know how to evaluate this risk. The second thing is we need to know how to prepare for this particular audit. There's an acting school by Anupam Kher, and he calls it as an actor prepares. For me, if I apply to an auditor, I would say an auditor prepares. If you're doing any assurance engagement, you have to prepare for the assurance, which means you need to understand the business process. You need to understand the operating environment, the technology, regulations, policy and procedures, etc. And based on that, you need to prepare the work programs or the audit programs to meet the objectives of the assignment. And you will evaluate this by collecting and evaluating appropriate evidence. Now, once again, we are looking at evidence. I'll come back to this a little later. Based on the appropriateness of the evidence, the adequacy and the appropriateness of the evidence will provide the findings and conclusions. Now, we prepare an audit plan, which is called as a part of the engagement planning. And these are the factors to be considered in assurance planning. We prepare the detailed audit work program. And what is the objective of the detailed audit program? We need to identify, analyze, evaluate, and record information during the engagement as per the scope and objectives of the audit. The most important factor is to set up the criteria. Adequate criteria are needed to evaluate the controls. Depending on the scope and objectives of the audit, I need to decide what are the criteria I'm going to use for the purpose of evaluation. For example, if it's a tax audit, the tax regulatory authorities have, let's say, 30 bits of information which has to be collected, verified, and validated, based on which you're supposed to give the report. So we need to, first of all, this becomes the control criteria for us. So based on experience, we already know what is required. We already have a ready-made form where we know what are the questions to be asked. Based on that, we evaluate and provide the audit report. So it's important to set the right criteria based on the need of the audit. Now, we also need to look at whether the management. Now, you should remember, just like accounting, the responsibility of maintaining the accounts is the responsibility of the management. Similarly, the responsibility of implementing controls also belongs to the management. So the management is responsible for ensuring that they have established the right criteria, which means they decide for the type of transactions they have, what are the regulatory implications, what applies as per the compliances, and then implement it. As an auditor, we are supposed to collect evidence and evaluate whether this has been correctly applied. And if we find there are control weaknesses, we provide the report to the management. Let's go further. In an audit engagement, in order for meaningful conclusions to be reached, they need to be made in relation to a set of suitable criteria. So depending on the type of the audit, we'll decide what is that we are going to evaluate. Okay, so we set the criteria. Based on that, the criteria becomes the benchmark for us to decide how the subject matter of the audit will be assessed or evaluated. Now, there are generally accepted criteria, which could be formulated based on the acts or regulations. For example, let's say if you look at tax audit or any compliance audit, there is general accepted criteria, there are standard forms, there are standard aspects we need to look at. And if it's an internal audit, the management will also set the scope and objectives of the audit. So based on that, we need to set up the general accepted criteria, and then we perform the assignment. And while performing the assignment, we need to identify, analyze, evaluate, and record sufficient information, which means we collect the evidence as per the engagement objectives. Now let's go further. This is how we perform the engagement. Identify the information is required for audit. This is another important thing. This information which was required for the audit was available to us earlier in the form of files, records, and registers. And we used to inquire, we used to interrogate, ask questions to people in the organization based on the organized structure. And based on that, we used to come to a conclusion whether there are any findings and what are the recommendations as per the control weakness are concerned. In the case of a digital environment, in the case of an automated environment, this particular question of identifying information has to be radically changed. This way we have to bring about a paradigm shift, which I'm going to talk about in the second part of the presentation. So we need to know what is the information, which means what are the data we are going to collect for the purpose of the audit. Second, we need to know how to analyze and evaluate this information. Now, we are already experts in evaluating the information which is available to us in a physical form. Now we have to learn how to evaluate the data which is available in a digital form. And most of us would have been forced to do this because of the COVID environment. You find that most of the data we had to collect from the clients in a digital form, and our staff sitting at their home or different places, they had to learn to do the audit. So we have learned it the hard way, how to analyze and evaluate this information. And the techniques which I'm going to show you in the last part of my presentation would definitely be useful and helpful to you. And you can see how best you can integrate this as a part of an audit or assurance process. And whatever evaluation we do, we need to record this information and based on the audit findings and provide the report. So if you look at the process flow, most of us are familiar with this. There is a management request. Based on that, we prepare the audit plan. There is an audit objective which is set. Based on that, we decide what are the criteria. And then we prepare the detailed audit program with the audit tests and procedures. We perform the audit program, the audit test, and then based on that, we collect the evidence, evaluate the evidence, analyze the evidence, and come to the conclusions and prepare a report which is presented to the management. Now, what will be this type of audit? Whether it's a compliance audit or a financial audit or an internal audit or a performance audit, you find generally the process flow is the same. But what will change internally is the scope and objectives. Based on the scope and objectives, we will prepare the detailed audit programs and tests. And also, depending on how the data is available to us, we are going to decide how we are going to evaluate and analyze this audit evidence. Now, let's look at a few more things. We have to prepare, based on the audit test, we have to prepare the detailed audit procedures where you're going to look at the evidence presented or made available to us, evaluate them, and this could be done through various audit procedures such as inspection, observation, inquiry, confirmation, various computation, analysis, and discussion. Now, if you look at these key aspects here in terms of audit procedures, this is where I want to bring in the distinction as to how we will operate in a manual environment vis-a-vis a digital environment. Now, if you look at inspection, the inspection of the documents which is available physically, now you find most of the documents are also scanned and available digitally. So we should learn how to inspect these documents. Now, in a physical document, there used to be a signature or sign, whereas in this case, if it's a scanned copy of the document, there's no issue. But we also need to be aware that this can be digitally forged. So we should know how to evaluate or inspect this digital evidence or documents. We also need to observe. Now, in the case of observation, this is talking about physical observation. Now, in the case of physical observation, now this could be applicable in a physical environment. In a digital environment, it will be difficult. We have to find different ways of doing observation. Okay. Similarly, if you look at inquiry, earlier we are inquiring with the concerned staff, depending on their organization structure, depending on the level of management, depending on what is the scope and responsibility of the staff, depending on the responsibilities. Now we need to inquire not only the people, we also need to know how to inquire the data, because most of the controls in an automated environment get embedded in the system, which means inside the technology, all the controls get embedded. For example, if you're looking at, let's say you're using an automated software, let's say software like Tally or any package, let's say SAP or any software for that matter, and you are selling, and GST is applicable to you for different products at different rates. These rates which are applicable would be embedded, will be entered inside the software, and this would be applied by the software depending on the type of selections you make. So for inquiring, for finding out whether the correct rates have been applied, you need to go to the parameters of the software and check whether the parameters have been correctly applied and they have been enforced throughout the year. Not only that, you can also take a copy of the data and do data analytics. And this is what I'm going to come in the third and fourth part of the presentation today. We also need to get confirmation. Now, confirmation earlier was physical confirmation. Now we have to also look at digital confirmation. The other important aspect is most of the computation pertaining to the software. For example, let's say you make a sale. For that sales, a particular rate of tax is applicable. And they also provide a discount based on the volume. So these computations earlier were done manually in a manual environment, whereas in the case of software, this will be embedded inside the software, and these computations will be done by the software. Now you need to know how to evaluate whether this computation is done correctly. Now, you may not have the skill set, or you are not required to actually evaluate the source code of the software, and many times it may not be applicable. For example, if you look at Tally, now how does it compute the GST rates? How does it compute the total? You can only get to know by auditing around the computer, by giving sample data entries, or by checking for the entries which are already made. So it means we look at the input, provide the input, look at the, and based on that, it's already done. That's one way of doing the analysis or audit or evaluation of the evidence. The second way is I get a copy of the raw data which is stored inside the computer. For example, let's say from Tally, I export the daybook, and on the daybook transactions, let's say I pick up only the sales vouchers. On the sales vouchers, I apply the rate, let's say independently using an Excel software to check whether the rates have been correctly applied for all the transactions as it's applicable. So computation undergoes a drastic change in an automated environment. We also need to do analysis. Quite often, I'll show you a little some more examples as we go on. It is how we can do analysis and how analysis changes in an automated environment. We also discuss the findings with the client, and based on that, we decide what is going to be finally reported. Now let's look at the final product of our assurance, which is the reporting. And this has to follow the reporting standards. These are written in such a way that the important issues are easily understood. So we look at the concept of materiality, and we include only the information which is required to properly understand the conclusions and whether there are any significant problems. And based on that, we provide the recommendations also as required. And as per the scope and objectives of audit, we provide the audit report within the timelines as required. It's also important that we identify the criteria, as I told you, for the purpose of audit. So this gives you some more aspects. Depending on scope of audit, we also need to look at the relevant laws, regulations, policies, and standards. Now you find more and more, especially in the case of compliance audit, the burden, the onus of verifying has been shifted to the auditor. The management is responsible for implementing, whereas the responsibility of verifying, validating is increasingly passed on to the auditor. For example, recently I just saw the notification that TDS at a higher rate would be applicable if the client has not, if the company has not filed the returns for 2 years. Now the client, before deducting the TDS, suppose I have done a billing for a company, that company is asking me to give a declaration, asking me whether I filed the returns for the last 2 years, and if so, give the acknowledgement for that particular returns. Now just imagine the type of paperwork and the responsibility which increases for the management. And not only that, as an auditor, I have to verify whether this becomes one more increasing part of compliance which I have to validate. Whether the company has verified for all the TDS which has been done, whether the particular company is actually the returns and whether the return files are correct. Now I spoke to my friend who is the auditor of a company. He told me that recently they changed it to say that the company can actually verify it online on the income tax website. Still, the onus of verifying this still remains with the auditor. As the auditor, you have to verify for all the TDS which has been done. Earlier, you used to verify based on the constitution of the company, what based on the type of the transaction, what the tax which is a TDS done. Whereas now you also see whether the company has complied with the regulations by filing the income tax returns, and if they have defaulted for 2 years, then higher rate of TDS should have been done. So the scope of regulations keeps on increasing, the responsibility of the auditors keeps on increasing. This is where we have to look at how we can audit this. So this is something we're looking. Now this concludes the first part of the presentation, where we went back to the basics and looked at how we have to understand how auditing is done or how assurance is done, and we gave you a quick perspective what the product flow. Now this is the process flow for the assurance process. Now with this broad understanding, now let's apply this to the current environment, and that is a digital environment. Most of you would have seen now the clients are automated, and the government or the regulatory authorities also expect that you are automated and do the filing or all the regulatory compliances electronically. So there is no escape from automation. We have to ensure that we use the right automated tools. And this is what is the key focus of the presentation, that if you want to make your assurance effective, we have to learn how to use the right automated process. Now, in using the automated process, it's very important that we need to have the right mindset. Now, let me share a story which I heard from Guru Raj Acharya. He was telling the students once in a meeting that there's a young boy who wanted to cross a mountain. And when he crosses, he was sitting there at the bottom of the mountain and thinking about how to cross because it was nearing sunset and he knew it was a little hot. At that time, he found an old man having already climbed the mountain, climbing down, and he was singing merrily. So this young man went and asked him, how was the climb and how was he able to climb at this age? He's able to climb and enjoy the climb to the mountain. And it seems the old man smiled at the young man and said, if you have to climb the mountain, first you cross it in the mind, then you can cross it physically. So in automation also, I think one of the important things we have to look at is we have to change our mindset. Now, changing mindset, changing our processes is one of the most difficult things, but there's no escape. For example, let's say because of COVID, we have to wear a mask. I know most of you are feeling, I'm also getting the same problem. Quite often when I come out of the house, then I remember I've forgotten to take the mask. So I have to go and pick up the mask. Although it's been nearly 14 or 15 months, still our habits have not changed. So it takes time to change the habit. Suppose we are used to perform assurance or audit in a particular way. Now we have to automate in a digital manner. It's important that we need to change the process as per the requirements of the assurance, as per the requirements of the audit data. This is what is most important. Now, how digital knowledge? What is important is the knowledge and skills do not change. Perform this assurance definitely. This is where you need to know what is the key differentiator, what is the knowledge we need to have. In learning technology, you need to remember that it's a skill, it is not a knowledge, which means you learn by doing, not by just knowing. It's like cycling. Now, what is the fundamental design pattern of the technology? It allows human beings to do things that were previously impossible. Let me just give a simple example. We are doing an assignment for a particular client where we have to automate. In this case, let's say they got about 30,000 transactions, which are provided from a software, which is the international software, ERP software they're using. Now, as per the regulatory requirements of India, they wanted to maintain the data in a ERP, in a Tally, and they also wanted to distinguish between, create two books, a set of accounts, one for the FCNR transactions and other for the Indian transactions. Whereas the international ERP transactions, all these are considered as one, and they are using the centralized ERP software throughout the world. Now, they gave us this particular assignment where we got the export, we exported the data for all these 30,000 plus transactions from that ERP software, and then we got it in Excel. Now, based on the Excel, we had to input the transactions in Tally. Now, just imagine manually if this has to be entered in Tally, even if we take 1 minute to 2 minutes per transaction, what is the amount of time it would have taken? Now, through an automated solution, we're able to provide them a solution through which we're able to finish the complete automation. It took us about 12 to 14 hours to set up the chart of accounts, the head of accounts, everything for this particular system, the hierarchy, etc. for the chart of accounts. And you may not believe these 32,000 transactions were able to import inside Tally in 4 minutes. And that is the power of technology. So we know that technology definitely has the speed and power, but it's important we should know how to implement correctly. Because of COVID, we know that we have fast forwarded. Many of us have been forced to implement technology, but it's important that we need to look at from a strategic perspective and implement it effectively as required. Now let's look at the challenges of the digital era, especially for CES. Now we know that the huge volume of transactions, and this could be many times online or real time. Many small time businessmen, SMEs are also selling online, let's say on Amazon or Flipkart or Snapdeal. So in that case, when they're selling online, most of the transactions happen directly. The accounts are maintained directly for the online transactions by the online seller like Amazon. And this company can generate a statement on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis, giving the complete result of all the transactions. They'll also get to know what is the amount sold, what is the amount returned, and what is the amount which has been paid to them, including the service charges. Now, many of these SMBs actually take this particular data and they give it to the auditors, and the auditors actually manually enter the data in Tally. Now, instead of this, we can actually automate a solution through which this particular Excel statement can be directly read by the software, converted as a Tally voucher and imported directly into Tally or in the software. And if you see, let's say there are 1,000 transactions in a week, and all the 1,000 transactions can be imported in probably less than 10 minutes. And that is the speed of processing which is possible with the computers. But we need to understand how to implement automation for this. And another important thing is that the control shifts from the physical to the digital. So what controls we are evaluating? For example, let's say for a particular product of a particular product type, the rate of tax was, let's say, IGST 18%. In that case, if it has been verified, earlier we used to take a sample and then based on the sample used to verify. Now, if you know it is automated, we can actually verify through the computer and we can perform 100% verification of these transactions. So it becomes very important that we learn how to understand how the software works, how the parameters are set, and then how to interrogate this digital data and analyze and evaluate the evidence. And we also know that IT knowledge is something which has to be continually updated. For example, if you look back into the past and you see 10 years back, what are the type of mobile phone you're using and what is the type of mobile phone you are using now, you find there is a radical, dramatic change in the way now mobile phones are being used. In the same way, technology keeps on changing. We need to learn how to use technology as required. So the fundamental focus of my presentation so far in the second part has been to explain that there is a better way to provide assurance, to ensure compliance, provide validation, and so that we can be more productive, more effective, and perform our assignments on time. Now, this concludes the second part of my presentation. Now, I'd like to look at the third part of the presentation, where we would like to look at the role of data analytics. Okay, before I go to the third part of the presentation, let me give you a story once again. Remember, long back, there was the battle of Mahabharata. And in that battle of Mahabharata, Arjuna was the warrior and he asked Krishna, his charioteer, to take him to the middle of the battlefield so that he can survey the armies. And after surveying the army and then looking at the friends and relatives who were on the opposite side, he got despondent and said, I cannot fight. At that time, Krishna gave the Bhagavad Gita, based on which certain actions were taken. Now, I just wanted to look at this particular scenario. Now, if you come back to the palace at that time, the king Dhritarashtra had a courtier called Sanjay, and he had been given the gift or boon of a divine vision whereby he could see what's happening in the battlefield and communicate this to the king, the blind king Dhritarashtra. Now, here if you see, Krishna is giving Upadesha, the Bhagavad Gita, to Arjuna in the battlefield. That is being heard by Sanjaya, and he is communicating to Dhritarashtra as to what is happening in the battlefield. Now, look at this background or context and look at how many types of listeners are there and how many type of speakers are there. Now, if you look at the type of listeners, you have got Arjuna, Krishna, who is listening to Arjuna first, and based on that, he is communicating, he is replying to Arjuna. So Arjuna is listening, Krishna is listening, then Sanjaya is listening, and Dhritarashtra is also listening. Now, all the four are listening, and maybe all the four are also speaking. Now, the question is, what type of listeners are each of them? Now, if you look at Dhritarashtra, he is not interested in knowing what's happening in the battlefield. He only wants to see that his son win the battle, and he wants to learn only that. He wants to hear only that. He's not interested in learning anything from Krishna or anybody else. So you can call him as a negative listener. The second type of listener is Sanjaya. He's a passive listener. He's listening only for the purpose of communicating this particular information to Dhritarashtra. That is his only objective. Now, if you look at Arjuna, he is an active listener. He is listening so that you can apply it, and based on that, he can take action. Now, Krishna is also an active listener because understanding what is the problem for Arjuna, and based on that, he is giving the correct response. So these are the four types of listeners. Now, we can analyze, in fact, that's what I have done. You can analyze even the Bhagavad Gita based on analytics. And this is what I thought, this is the first time showing this to you. Let me pick up this particular Excel file and show this to you. Now, this is the Bhagavad Gita. I hope all of you are able to see the screen. Now, if you see here, I did this as a study because I have been studying this for so many years. Now, I have got the complete text of the Bhagavad Gita here. It's about, now let's say 717 rows. Okay, now if you come here, now who spoke? I just want to give you the analytics. Now, who spoke? If you see here, Arjuna. Let me just expand this. Now, if you see the people who spoke, Arjuna, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana also spoke. We'll see what he spoke, and that's not relevant for us for this. We also Krishna and Sanjaya. Now, let's look at what did Dhritarashtra speak. Now, if you look at this one, throughout the Gita, he spoke only one word, one sentence. And what was he interested in? Assembled in the holy field Kurukshetra and eager to fight. What did my people and the Pandavas do? That's what he's interested in. Now, if you look at what Arjuna spoke, Sanjaya spoke. This is interesting. Now, if you look at Sanjaya, he was communicating to him all the things about the battlefield. Now, if you see the main thing, so he explained what is happening. Okay, so his only objective was to communicate what's happening inside the battlefield. Now, if you look at, let's say, Arjuna. Now, Arjuna spoke a lot. He asked a lot of questions each of the time. Now, if you see first, it starts with the despondency. He says, I see no use of killing my kinsmen. I desire neither victory, like all this. And this is what he said. And he said, I do not wish to kill them. And then he said, I do not want to kill. Now, let's go further. Now, if you look at this chapter, so all these things he said, he had these issues, and based on that, he communicated the problem to this one. Now, if you see his final conclusion in this section, where he's talking about, my heart is overcome by weakness of pity, and my mind is confused, dharma, all these things he says, I do not perceive any gain. This is what he said. Okay. Now, after that, he started asking questions. So this is in verse 8. This is where he said, I'm not going to fight. After that, he started listening, and then he began responding to what Krishna said. Now, let's look at the last part. Now, if you look at, let's say, I'm just going to take one more minute on this. Now, if you look at Krishna, now we look at number of phrases, this one, what he spoke. Now, there are 583 verses where Krishna spoke, and he gave wisdom on various aspects of life and living and what is the purpose of life. Okay. So, just to give you that you can analyze Gita also. Now, here, if you see, I got various aspects, let's say body, mind, intellect, soul, Atman, like that. Now, based on that, I've actually analyzed and said, okay, what are this one pertaining to attributes of the human person? What are the attributes pertaining to this one, attributes of God? Soul, some analysis, so that if I want to understand some particular thing at a macro perspective, at a holistic perspective, I'm able to get an idea about what is being communicated by the Gita. Similarly, what are the keywords, and based on the keywords, I can search. This just to demonstrate even a scripture like Gita can be analyzed if you learn how to analyze. Not only that, you will be able to get, like I said, a helicopter approach, a holistic perspective or a macro perspective pertaining to subject when you do apply analytics. The same concept I want to apply it to analytics, especially for the digital data. Now, what we'll do is I have a sequel to the story. Now, at this end of this particular, this one, if you see, we'll come to the end. In the last part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about what did Arjuna do, what did Sanjaya do. After listening to this, what did they do? Now, you also have to decide at the end what you're going to do. Let's minimize this and now come back to our presentation. Now, this is where we are going to look at the role of the data analytics. Now, we know that manual approach audit tasks are tedious and quite often it's time consuming, and we adopt an ad hoc approach which may not necessarily meet the requirements of the peer review. Now, there's one more question we need to ask. In what format is data available for audit? Now, we know even in SME, most of the accounts are maintained in Tally. So it means the data is available in a digital format. So we should learn to collect and evaluate the evidence. They say audit is all about collecting and evaluating evidence as per the scope and objective of the audit. Now, when the data is available in a digital format, we should learn how to evaluate this digital evidence. The data is available in digital format. Now, data analytics is what is important. And they say it is the most critical skill which is required in an increasingly digitalized world. Where is the data available? Most of the cases, what are data you want? That's why I gave you the first slide. If you remember, we are living in a world where data is moving constantly. Now, you're operating, let's say, you're doing an online transactions. Where is the data going? On the Wi-Fi, it's actually traveling in the air and it's being communicated across the servers, and the transactions are happening digitally. Now, let's look at the data analytics software. What are the type of data analytics software available? Now, if you see, even this Excel could be an excellent software for data analytics. I'll come to this example a little later. You also have general audit software, which I'm going to demonstrate. Add-in for Excel with specific CAT functions. When you remember, most of the things you talk about CAT refers to computer-assisted audit techniques. It's also called as computer-assisted audit tools and techniques, which are written with a double T. There are also general audit software, which are independent data analytics software with specific CAT functions. You also have application software. For example, let's say Tally. Tally itself has separate section for auditors where you can extract the information or inquire data and get information as relevant for your audit. In addition to that, there is specialized audit software. For example, let's say core banking solution, Finacle. The audit department would have developed their own independent software for analyzing the data. For example, RBI a few years back gave a report saying that each of the banks have to have a control room where they actually perform what is called as continuous monitoring, continuous control monitoring, which means audit doesn't happen post-mortem. Actually, audit happens instantly as and when the transactions happen. So they're given a list of regulations or controls that are implemented in the control room, and they said these transactions have to be monitored on a regular basis. And that's where you find, as you go on in the future, the branch audit which is there may become lesser and lesser because the transactions are being monitored online from the control center in case of most of the banks which are using a core banking software. Now, there could be requirement, especially for evaluating the evidence and checking the documents, and that will still remain. But the relevance and the significance of branch audits and many other audits will also get lessened because of automation. What type of questions can data analytics answer? Now, these are three types of questions. We can look at the past, which is and gain hindsight of what has happened. We can look at the current and look at inferring insight from that information so that we can apply based on the knowledge we have got, we have learned from the past, what is the problem and how we can rectify this. Or we can also do what is called as foresight, which is predictive analytics, which means we can look at in the future. For example, there are AI solutions where they can look at, let's say, the scanning of the retina, and based on that, they can predict what is the percentage of probability that this person will have this eye problem. Okay, whereas manually they say the experts can predict, let's say, having 70% accuracy, where the AI solution can predict with, let's say, 80 to 90% accuracy. Similarly, there are also AI-based solutions which are coming in accounting and auditing, which can actually monitor the transactions and probably provide insights in terms of what can happen in the future. For example, some of the foreign banks are using this predictive analytics to identify the patterns of when the transaction could go bad. So even before the party becomes a defaulter, they start monitoring the transactions based on the pattern and to ensure that the transactions, the customer doesn't go, the loan doesn't go bad. Especially in the case of credit card transactions, looking at the pattern of spending, they're able to predict whether this fellow will default in the payment, and they start proactively following up, ensuring that these particular transactions are monitored closely so that the customer doesn't become a defaulter. Now, for all this, now what is in it for us? As far as we are concerned, we have got different types of assignments you can perform. One, when we do this compliance-related audits, we look at hindsight, which means we perform a post-mortem what happened in the past, and based on that, we have to report. Second, we may also have to give information to the management about how good the internal controls are and provide recommendations which can be implemented in the future. And that's where we get insight from information. As a predictive analytics concerned, this requires special skill and high-end solutions. Maybe we can look at in the future. I'm not going to cover this. My focus would be more on the first and the second part. And this is what I'm going to cover in the demo as we go on in the next 5 minutes. Now, if you look at, we've got data. Now, applying an algorithm, we should be able to infer insight so that management can take action. So if you look at, like I said, state the truth. If you want to analyze, understand data analytics in one slide, this is the one slide which communicates the complete understanding of what data analytics is all about. You got a plethora of data which is coming from multiple sources. You apply the algorithm or the logic. In fact, now they say, let's say most of the high-end, let's say Google, Facebook, and all other Twitter and so many others, they actually apply algorithm. Based on that, they're able to infer insights. And based on the insights, they're able to take action. For example, let's say you buy on Amazon, based on the pattern, it also tell you based on the pattern, it'll tell you that, okay, these people who bought this, you bought this book. So people earlier had bought this book along with this. So it applies AI and based on that gives you recommendations. Okay, so finally, what data analytics is all about is about inferring insights from information. Enhancing the effectiveness of our assurance process. Now let's come to the fourth part. I said I'll finish this within 1 hour. I've already done this within 50 minutes. Now I'm going to spend significant amount of time, let's say about 40 to 45 minutes, give you perspective of how you can perform data analytics by practically showing you how data analytics work with various case studies. Okay, before that, let me just give a quick overview. So when you want to perform assurance, these are the things you need to understand, especially in a data analytics world. You need to understand the business process, you need to understand the regulatory requirements, and you need to understand the organizational structure. Now, most important, you need to understand what are the regulatory criteria. You remember, we want to talk about the criteria. We need to understand what are the criteria which is applicable. For example, when it says organizational structure, segregation of duties, I'll show you examples a little later. We need to understand what are the roles and responsibilities, what are the limits which have been provided, authorization which is available to the employees. And when it's available in digital environment, we should be able to verify this. Similarly, the regulatory or compliance requirement, for example, let's say the tax rate which are applicable, these have been embedded in the software. We should be able to take the data, interrogate the data, and confirm whether it has been correctly applied. We also need to understand what are the business process controls. For example, let's say they got a particular policy based on which they provide credit limit to the customers or they provide discount to the customers. Then we should be able to understand what are the business process rules and use that as a criteria for evaluation and evaluate the evidence which is available in a digital format to confirm whether this particular business process controls have been met with or are there any deviations. So for all this, it's important that we understand what are the technology deployed, and based on the technology deployed, we should be able to collect the data, evaluate the data using CATs, which is computer assisted audit tools and techniques. That's why they say wherever there's a mouse, there is a cat. Okay, now I come back to this. So remember, the whole focus of what I covered so far, I'll come to this a little later, was CES are knowledge workers, and we need to learn how to constantly update our competency skill sets in the digital environment so that we are relevant even in the changing times. Now let me come back to the demo. I'll minimize this presentation and we'll focus on the demo. Okay, now let me open Excel. I'm going to use the data analytics software. This I've already shown you. I'll come back to this at the end because the sequel to the story which I told you about the 4 types of listeners. I'll come back to this a little later. Now let's come back to the data which I want to show. Now let's look at the demo data which I prepared for you for showing you various case studies. I hope you are with me so far and you're able to get a flow of what is that I'm trying to communicate to you. What the whole purpose of my communication so far has been to emphasize the importance on going back to the basics and looking at the evidence which are available in digital format and learning how to evaluate this digital evidence and provide validation. Now here I'm going to use a software, in this case, let's say called as eCAT Enterprise. This is what I'm going to use it for the demo. There are many software like this. You can decide which is software. I'm using the software which has been developed by a company for explaining to you what are the techniques and how this can be done. Now, if you look at any data analytics software, now if you see there will be curate function where you prepare the data for the purpose of evaluation. Then you have profile where you can get a profiling of the data. Then you analyze the data, investigate the data, and also you perform various documentation. And there are also utilities. And there are also Excel time enhancers which can help you to navigate and use the data much more effectively. Now, if you look at, let's say I just give you the panels. Now, if I just go here and select only the panels to give you an idea what is covered here. Now, most of the data software you'll find will have this curate panel. Now, this gives an explanation what the curate does. You have this profile panel, refers to the act of analyzing the data content to get an overall perspective of the data. And then you have analyze where you actually examine the data and discover to identify the essential features. Now, remember the most important aspect of data analytics is to identify exceptions and irregularities and confirm whether the data is correct and complete and valid. Now, you also investigate. It refers to observing the data in detail to check whether there are any irregularities or exceptions. And we also have documentation. There is also auto documentation feature which is available in the audit software generally, where it will keep a record of all the things you've done along with the timestamp. You also have got various tools which could be time enhancers. Based on the panel, under the panel, you may also have various menus and submenus. For example, let's say if I'm talking about curate, in curate we may have specific function. If you see here, remove menu, delete menu, transform menu. Like that, you may have different menus, convert, format, transpose, and each of this inside this may also have some submenus. If you see here, inside this, we may also have some submenus. For example, in data menu, data. So if you see here, in profile, I got this data. In data, I got Stratify. Inside data, I have Stratify numeric. So like that, there could be different functions. Now, how many functions do you expect this to be data analytics software? Now, the type of function, for example, let's say Excel is an excellent tool, and it could be very useful for data analytics. But if you look at the sum and substance of all that is possible in Excel, because Excel was not designed from the perspective of data analytics, you find probably there are about 12 to 15 techniques which could be effectively used for data analytics. And the other problem is it is also very cumbersome. You want to perform powerful analytics using Excel. Now, this is where I'm going to show you how you can perform powerful analytics using data analytics software. Now, if you look at the functions, let's say I'll just give you a list of the functions. Now, if you see here, total number, there are about 390 functions in this. Okay, now in this curate, there may be 70 functions. In profile, there may be so many functions. So you'll be able to get an idea what are the functions which are available. Now let's come to the example. So I wanted to have already done the homework to pick up some demo of what functions I want to show you. Now, if you see here, I'm going to use a function. I've also written what is the file I'm going to use for this. So one of the functions which I want to demonstrate, especially in the curate, is what is called as harmonize sheet. Okay. So what is that we do harmonize sheet? I'll just show you the function so that you can get understanding what is possible. Now let me see how many Excels are open. Okay, so I've got this. I'll come back to this later. Now let me open data. Now this particular file which I want to open is actually incidentally available here itself in the software called as test data. I'm going to open the test data. You should be able to, my idea is at least 20 to 25 techniques you should be able to use, and some of these techniques you can also apply in Excel. So you can see how best. My idea is that you should be able to start using this after this presentation. Okay, now I'm going to use this software. Now, if you see here, one of the first thing we do is we have this particular thing called an index sheet. This is a function which is available in the software. And now, if you see here, you come here, index sheets. When you click on this index sheet, what will happen is it actually creates an index sheet. Now, let me just say I come to this particular file. I've got this file. Let's say I create one more file here. Let's say I call it a sample. No, not this. Now let me name this file. Let's say I've created this file, sample1. Okay, I'm creating this particular file called sample2. Okay, like this, I've got multiple worksheets. What I would like to do is, now sometimes you get this particular sheets, it will be given just a sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3 like this. I don't know how many, this number of worksheets are there, and what are the data which is available. In fact, I remember one case, I got a sheet from one of the companies where it's supplying the software. They gave us the worksheet, and based on the data available, I filled up the details, and there are a lot of formatting I had to do. Then I found in other place, they just given it a sheet 3, and in the sheet, the format data was available. Now, let's say if I use this file, index sheet, now just see what happens. It actually creates a index sheet, which means it creates one more worksheet, gives the index with the details with the link for this particular worksheet. Okay, in the meantime, okay, this taking the first time, it takes a little time. Let me see if you got any questions. I think I'll be able to. If you got any questions, you can post to the chat window. I'll take it up depending on the convenience. Okay, now if you see, this is created. Now if you see here, it is created the worksheet. Let me see. Now if you see here, this is the sheet. It gives the number of rows, number of columns, number of cells in sample 1. Now here, if I want to go to sample 1, I just click on this. It's created the link. It goes to sample sheet. Okay, this is how whatever be the worksheet, this becomes the first important thing which you have. You can also use the macro to create the index. You can explore if you don't have the audit software. So what happens, this becomes a very good documentation for you for all the files which you got, the workbook you got. You just create an index sheet. You have the first sheet which gives the complete list of all the files. And this is what I'm showing you here in this case. Now, if you see the sample data, I've got this index sheet. Now, if you see here, there are so many sheets which are available. And for each of this sheet, I know what is the number of transactions. Not only that, I also know what is the sheet which is hidden, what is the sheet which is very, very hidden. I'll be able to navigate this. Okay, which means if I got hidden sheet also, there is a function where I can go and unhide this. Now let me go and unhide this. So if I come to the software, there is an option where I can okay, let's see where it is available. Now I'm not sure where it's available. So in that case, let's say I go to eCat search and run. There is a function search and run. Now let's say I give unhide. Now you see this is a place where this function is available. It's available in tools and it's there hide. Okay, this is where it's available. Now here I've got tools. Now you see this is where this function is available. Now this form is already available. Okay, this is what I had. Now directly from this I can double click, run. Now this will open that particular. If this is working, I should be able to open that particular form. Okay, there is a small problem in this. I'll directly come here and open from this particular option. So if you see here, hide, unhide, or you can do rows and columns, you can do worksheets. Here, what I want to do was, I want to do for the worksheets. Now this, my objective is this journal. Now if you see here, there are two different things I want you to remember. There's something called journal, which is the hidden sheet. There's another sheet called as the vouchers, which is the very hidden. Now if you go to this, now let me just show you one more thing. Now if I come here, now let's say unhide. If you come to this unhide, now you see I can directly hide journal only is being shown. So it means using this directly, I can unhide the sheet. Now if I come back here, I come back to the, I want to navigate to the first sheet. I just say go to the first sheet. Now it comes to this. Now journal is there, but I don't have this information. I don't have a link. So what I do is I just go here and say index sheets. Now you see the index will be created. Now I can go to this particular sheet journal. Okay. Now let me come back here. Now I want to see how I can take this unhide. How do I unhide? Now if you see here, it will not be available in the hide unhide option. You can do it only through a macro, or we already have a ready-made function called as very unhide. When you click on this, you see this voucher is available. I say very unhide. Now what will happen in this case is, now let me come back again to the sheet. So if you go to the first sheet, now I should be able to create, now this is what I clicked once again. Now if I go to very unhide, you will find nothing will be available. In unhide also nothing is available. Here I can also decide that I want to hide multiple sheets at one shot. I can go and select what I want. I can hide all the sheets at one go. Whereas manually in Excel, you have to go and do it for each of the sheets after selecting. Now let me come back here and go to the navigate to the first sheet. Now I've got this. Now it's not available. So what I do is I come back here and come and say index sheets. Now you see the journal and vouchers is also available. Okay. Now let me get started with this journal itself. First of all, let me take up a case study. Now first case study is I've got this journal vouchers. Okay. This is the data I've got for audit. Now if you look at this data, I've got the date. Now if you want to understand the perspective, this is what is called as profiling. I go to data and as a filter, I will do you how I can do to Excel, and I'll also show you through the data analytics software. First, I want to understand whether the data is in the right format. I go inside this and check. Now, if the data is coming like this, the date related data, then I know the date format is correct, which means I can apply the filter and get this data. Okay, now you've got this JV number. I need to understand how this particular data is organized. So I have the JV number. If you go in, it looks like JVs have got a unique number. Every is passed as a JV. Let's pick up one transaction to understand how it works. Let's pick up one JV1, and this is a character format. Now, if you look at here, you got the debit and you got the credit, and narration is being written both the places. Okay, I'm going to remove this. Now, this one. Now you got the ledger name, and I've got the debit and credit. Now my objective is, first of all, for each of the JVs, I want to verify whether debit and the credit totals are correct. Okay, how do I verify this? I can, in Excel itself, I can just go here, debit. Now if you see here, I am getting the total here, 291.44.183.21. I come to the credit here. Now I see 289.70, which means there is a difference here. Now, how do I verify there's a difference? I go by the pivot table. I can insert a pivot table and pick up the ledger name. Based on that, I'll be able to pick up. Okay, it will do the total for the debit and the credit for each of the voucher. And then I add one more column, compute the difference between debit and credit. Then once again, I filter, and based on that, I'll be able to pick up what are the transaction, the difference. The same thing I do through the data analytics software. I'll do this through multiple steps. Now I'll show you how this can be done in data analytics. Now here I come to this particular function. So here my objective, this is first case study. My objective is to verify whether this debit and credit are tallying. I know they're not tallying. Okay, I also want to find where is the differences. Okay, what I'm also going to do, one more function I'm going to use for understanding the profiling of the data, and that is I come to data, not data, I come to details. There's something called column properties. When I click on the column properties, this should be able to give me. Now it says there are some validation to be done. It does the validation. So if there are any special characters, column names have to be rewritten, it will do this. Okay. I was looking at something else, I went somewhere else, it doesn't matter. Now let's say I load properties. Now here it gives me a quick overview. In this case, if you see, let me expand this, magnify this. Now if you see here date, I get the total number of cells. Okay. For debit, how many unique cells are there? For credit, how many unique cells are there? Okay, I get the narration, how many places are available, maker, checker, how many places are available. So it also gives me maker and checker. So if you see here, there are 16 distinct types of makers. Similarly, checker, there are 12 distinct types of checkers. Okay, it also tells me if there are any blank cells, because in this case, when debit is there, credit will be blank, like that, vice versa. That's how the transactions have been written. So this gives me a quick idea. Now, for example, if you see JV number is actually a character field. Ledger name is a character field. Debit and credit is a numeric field. So I get an overall perspective of the data. Based on this, it becomes easy for me to analyze. Now, this data I want in Excel, I just click on Excel. I'll be able to get this result in Excel. Okay, I cancel this. Now let me minimize. Now let me perform this test. After that, I'll come to the procurement harmonize, which you talked about. I got this particular data. Now I want to understand one more thing. I want to get an overall perspective of the data. What I'll do is I'll look at column statistics. Now let me see from this, what is the perspective I get. Now I got this debit and credit. This for the numeric transactions. Now if you see at one glance, I'll be able to get all this information. What are the average of positive records, negative records, some of the negative records, what is the minimum value, maximum value, and the formula which has been applied, whether the need data will I can get one go. Okay, I'm just going to say okay. Now I selected only some of them so that we can do it a little faster. Now this will be able to give me a perspective of this numeric data. Now if you see here, now it gives me this particular data. What is the average of the positive records? What is the number of null records? Null value records, sum of all the records. Now here itself I can make out that there is a difference in the trial balance in the transactions between the debit and the credit. It also gives me the transactions. In the case of credit, the minimum value is 1, the maximum value is this. Okay. Similarly, I want to get an idea about the date field. For this date field also I can perform the analysis. Let me perform this. So where is it available? I come to details. In details, I have this column statistics. So this is one of the first things you do in data analytics. You just get a profiling of the data so that you get to understand how this data is actually organized. I come to the date. There is only one date related field. Now here it gives me all the statistics. I'm going to say I want to get all the data related statistics. This may take a little time, but doesn't matter. But you'll find a lot of valuable information which is available. So it will load the result for all these fields. For this data related fields, we had only one field. Now I'm able to get, let us see the average of, now here, let me come to the date field. Now if you see here, for the date related field, I get the total number of records. There are no null value records. What is the earliest date? Now here itself, I can make out the cutoff concept. The earliest date is 1st April 19 and the last date is 31st March 2020. It also gives me the number of transactions which happened on each of the months. Now here is one more interesting thing. It also tells me what are the transactions which happens on each day of the week, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Let's see whether any transaction Sunday also. Yeah, there are some transactions Sunday also. So it looks like maybe Saturday is a holiday and Saturday they got the least number of transactions. It also tells me, because in this case no formula is applied, so there is no question of cells with inconsistent values. So I can save this in Excel and that becomes a part of my audit documentation. So one of the first things we did was just to get a perspective of the data. We use the index sheets, and from the index sheet, after that, we just remove the hidden and unhidden files. And now we got a complete list of all the files. Okay, now I'll come back to this particular thing. So I've got this data. Let me close this and then I'll come to the other function. Now here, what I want to do, what is the assignment we want to perform? I want to find out where there is a difference. Okay, in this particular transactions. So what I'll do is I'll come to data. There is a simple function called classify, which is similar to the pivot table in Excel. Now look at the difference. I'm going to do in 2 steps. I want to do based on the ledger name. Okay, I want to get total based on the ledger name. and I want to group based on the JV number. Okay, which means for each ledger name, as per the JV number, I'll be able to get, or let's say directly, I can say as per the JV number, I'll not break group by, as per the JV number, I want to separate, which you can also do in the pivot table. I say, okay. Now for each of the JV number, unique JV number, it will compute the debit and the credit. Now if you see, look at JV, it could be possible the transactions could be 1:1 or 1:many or many::many or many:1. Now if you see here, for each of the transactions, now I'm able to get here the complete for each of the JVs, what are the number of transactions. I want to see what is the pattern of JVs they pass. I just want to select this. I just do a single click here. Based on this will be organized ascending or descending. Now if you see here, this particular JV 479, they actually push 43 transactions in this one particular JV. No, yeah, correct, 43 transactions. No, sorry, 43 is the number of transactions. Now if you see here, this is the number of transactions that push through one particular transaction, one particular JV. Okay, it gives me the complete this one for JV number 479. What is the total number amount we have got here? So it means what I can also do is I can go and analyze based on. Now let me do the same thing now. I will do it based on the ledger name. Now I pick up based on the ledger name. There's no sense in making for the narration, but maker checker, if I do, I'll get what the count for this. I have the debit and credit. Now I say okay. Now for each of the ledger name, it's like you're getting the transactions summary for each of the parties. So I'll be able to get for each of the transactions. Okay, what are the number of transactions which happened? Not only that, I want to sort this in ascending or descending order. I can know which party has got the maximum number of transactions. As you see, DMX India has got 154 transactions, and this is the total amount of the debit and credit. Okay, now let's say travel expenses, I got this support 99 transactions there, travel expense sales 75 transactions there. So it gives me the complete debit and credit for each of the transactions. Okay, now I want to see based on the debit, who has got the highest, who has got the lowest. Now if you see, DMX India seems to be the highest as far as the amount is concerned. Let's look at the credit. So it means I can perform dynamic analysis on this. So here if you see, Rainbow Logistics Services has the maximum amount of credit during the year. Okay, there are no debit here. So this itself gives me some eyebrows as to how come we got so much of credit, and it looks like we have not made any payments at all to the parties. Okay, same thing for the debit. I can also analyze whether they got only debits, especially for Sunday tasks, and not made any payments. Then probably there is an issue of the bad debts. Now here we got the total debits and credits. Now I can save this in Excel and then compute the difference. Now it will tell me what the net debit and credit of all the ledgers. Okay. Now that is not the purpose. I just want to give you a perspective how you can do analysis based on this. Once I've got the data analyzed in this way, I can also go and filter and pick based on particular criteria. Now if you see here, I got the maker checker. I want to pick up all the transactions where I got the maker checker. For example, these are the maker checker. Now we got one more interesting thing. I'll come to that a little later, where I want to find where the maker and checker are same. Or why wait, let's perform this right now. What I want to do is I want to perform where the maker and checker are same. So I have this duplicates in same row. When I come to duplicates in same row, I'm just taking one sample data and then showing you. So it is very, very simple. I just go to maker and checker, which means if it is available, I should be able to get this information at one go. How many transactions are there where the maker and checker are same? Now, if you see here, there are totally 54 transactions where the maker and checker are same. So if you see here, arrow. Now here also you want to find out, okay, what are the number of transactions done by, let's say, VI. I'll be able to filter and pick up all the transactions as VI. So at one glance, I'll know as per segregation duty is concerned, these 54 transactions, segregation duty has not been done. This transactions has been done by one user. Now I want to see based on the value, okay, who has done the transactions based on the authorization policy. Let's say I look at debit. I can sort it based on the debit or the credit. So now you see based on the credit, I can see which is the amount which is the highest. Here similarly based on the debit. Now salary is 560 and 400. This particular transaction has been made and also verified by the same person. Again, for the month of July also the same thing has happened. So you can go and explore why this particular transaction or not salary transaction was not authorized and was passed by only one person. Okay, now let's come back to our original problem which is talking about. So we understood the particular data. What I want to know is I want to find out the difference. Now let's come back again to this function data. I say classify. So this is what I said, you apply thought to technology and analyze the data. Here, what I'd like to do is based on the JV number. I want to pick based on the JV number. Okay, and I want the debit and the credit. Next, this is what I've got. Next, I compute. Okay, so what is that I want to compute? Debit minus. Now you see here, it also gives the step debit minus credit. Okay, I add the formula. Okay, and then I say compare. In compare, I say from the results what I got, I want to pick up the sum of the debit. Okay, and I want to find out which is not equal to credit. Okay, so which means at one glance, I will be able to pick up this information. Based on this, you should be able to tell me which are the exact JVs where there is a difference. Now, if you see here, there are 6 records where there's a difference. Now, just see the power of the data analytics software. Now, see here, in this particular case, I got this 5 number vouchers. This is JV 244, where the debit is 345, 248, where the credit is 172, 624. 274 JV number. I got 2 transactions, 6,900 and 6,600. Now, I want to see the details. I just double click. Now I can go directly to the voucher and see this particular transaction, that this is the 6,600 debit, 6,600 is the credit, and 6,900 is the debit. As you see, I've been able to perform the audit of this, pick up the transactions at one glance. I've been audited this particular part, right? Now this is the first case study. Now let me go to the second part, which is talked about. So I have prepared the data. In this case, what I wanted to do was, I wanted to come to the file. Let me see what is the, okay, let me come back to the first file, which I had. I go to the first sheet. Okay, these are the files which are available. I got this procurement file. Let's pick up the second case, procurement. In this case, procurement, there are multiple things to be done. So before this, I want to perform one more function, and which is in the, let's say, I want to pick up the journal we have seen. Now I'm going to pick up the similar case with a little more complexity. I got this vouchers. Now here, if you see, if you analyze the data, in the journal voucher, I got the date. Okay, I got the transaction ID. I got the date, ledger number, sales, voucher type. Now here, if you see, based on the voucher type, if I apply the Control Shift L, let me see, this should be able to apply the filter. Yes, Control Shift L, I apply the filter. Now here, if you see, for each voucher type, there's a distinct numbering. So like what I did last time in voucher numbering, I cannot do it here. Okay, in that case, what do? I have to do classify and then group based on the voucher type. Now let's see whether debit and credit tally and whether there's a difference. Now when I look at the debit, I get this 15, 18, 95, 573. Okay, here if I look at the credit, 15, 18, 95, it looks like 100% is tallied. But still I want to verify internally for each of the voucher types, whether the debit and the credit is same or whether some of the data has been manipulated. Okay, so how do I verify this? Let me come here. I come to the data. I say classify. I use the same function classify. Now the only problem is we'll keep on going to the background. I have to manage this. Okay. Now there is a validation is being done. Let's see whether I close the menu forms which are not required. Okay, anything else? Yeah, this also I can close. Yeah, so navigation is less. Yeah, so I think we can close this also. Data to the form. This is a sheet which I want to come back. Okay, let's come back here. Let me come back to my sheet. Yes, this is a sheet available. Now I got this data. Now what is that I want to do? I want to compute. Now if you remember here, what that I want to do between the debit and the credit, where the total tallies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up based on the voucher type. Okay, which means voucher type, which is the sales. I want to do based on sales, and I have to do group by. Based on group by is the voucher number, which means for each unique voucher type and the voucher number, I want the total of the debit and the credit. Simple. Now let us total this. Now this should give me a total for each of the debit and credit. You can also do it to the pivot table. pivot table or pivot table. So this will be able to compute for all the transactions, let's say 2000 or 3000 transactions, whatever be the number of transactions. It will compute the total dynamically and it will tell you, okay, for each voucher type, voucher number, and it tells me the pattern. Okay, what is the total of the debit and credit? Here I can take this in Excel and do further analysis to find out the difference. This is one way. No, I don't want to do this analysis. I want to, through the software itself, I want to find out. So what do I do again? I come back here again, come to classify. Now here, what did I do? Pick up the voucher type, then group by voucher number, input. This is what I got. I want the total of the debit and the credit. This come. Now I want to compute. What is that I want to compute? I want to compute the total debit minus credit. Okay, and from the results, I want to pick up the sum of debit not equal to 1 minute. I come to the result, sum of debit, step 3, minus. No, sorry. I see what is the mistake I made. I'm still in compute. I didn't add the formula. I have to pick this formula now. Sum of credit minus is already there. Then I say sum of credit. Now, if you see the formula gets added here, sum of debit minus credit. Now I have to add this. Now this is added. Now I'm going to compare. In the compare, I have this from result. I want the sum of debit. Okay, step 3, sum of credit, and I want to find out not equal to. Okay, and say okay. Let's see the result now. I should be able to get an idea whether there's any differences. Now we found the total debit and credit tallied, but still, now if you see here, based on this, I find there are 4 vouchers where the debit and credit doesn't tally. Okay, so what is the difference here? If you see here, in this case, let's maximize this. Now, if you see here, in this case, I've already got this particular cases where the difference. So if you see here, debit is 26,000, credit is 25,000. Here 231,300. This 232,300. So it means I'm able to find out where all there is a difference. So it means I've been able to pick up transactions where the debit and credit doesn't tally, and in one glance I've been able to pick up this particular information. Okay. Now I want to perform that harmonize. We don't have the sample data here, so I'll not be able to perform that. The harmonize data is a very simple function where I can go and remove the, I'll just give you an idea. Let's say in this case, when I come to transform, this is one of the first functions you perform. When it's a harmonize sheet, it gives me a list of functions which you can perform on that particular sheet. Let's say, see, I can remove the top X row. I can remove the unmerge the column headings, because for data analytics, I cannot have column headings which are merged, unmerge all the data, remove empty columns, remove blank rows, name blank columns. Like that, I can do multiple things, or I can select the basic options. It will by default pick up all these options, and based on that I can perform. I also have the option to remove the subtotal, the grand total, etc. If it is there, I can remove this. This is what I can do through the procurement function. Now, if you see here, we have picked up 2 case studies. One is the journal, and then we looked at the vouchers, and we found where the debit and the credit tallies. Okay, now let's come to the next function, which I want next case study, where what I would like to do is, let's say I pick up the aging 2 fields. I've got this aging 2 fields. Now, if you look at the data, first thing you need to understand what is the data structure. Now, if you see here, in this particular case, I've got the sales data and I've got the purchase data. I've got the receipt date. Okay. What I would like to know is, for this particular date, I want to see how are the parties making the payment, and within how many days do they make the payment, because I want to verify compliance with the credit policy or the collection policy. Okay. Now I minimize this. So it means now if you see here, total number of transactions, I got about 6,667 transactions, including the header. So it means if you remove one, 66 is the transactions. Now let's see, I got this particular receipt date. I can also do this through Excel. How do I do it? I have to do this where I say plus this F2 minus, which is the other date, A2, then it will give me the number, then I have to convert that as a number, and then based on that, I'll be able to get an idea about the number. Now, that's not the simple thing I want to do. What I'd also like to do, I want to see the pattern of the payment or the collection from the debtors. Okay, so for that, there is a function which I use called as stratify aging. I come to the stratify aging. Now here you should know clearly what is that you're going to verify. You got the receipt date. Now you're going to subtract the receipt date from the sale date. Now automatically it computes, if you see here, automatically it computes the minimum interval is 25 days and the maximum interval is 199. Okay, and the increment by default it is picked up the maximum minus minimum, and based on that it has taken this. I can take this or I can change this and give my own increment of 20. Okay, I say fill. I got this particular data and I say okay. Now see, for all these records which are available, I'll be able to get at one instance in a few seconds, I should be able to get analysis of the payment patterns from the data for this particular company. Now if you see here, how many percentage of parties have paid within, if you see here, in this case, between 25 to 44, 3,094 parties have paid, which means 46% of the parties have made this payment. Similarly, between 45 to 64 days, there are 51% of the payments which are made, which means most of the cases, 97% of the payments has come within 60 days. Now, let's say the credit policy of the company, let's say maximum they're giving 30 days, then I can go back and change this, and then based on that, I can perform again. Or let's say the credit policy is 60 days, I can go and change this and look at this. Now here I find these are the parties who are maximum defaulters. Now if you see in this case, based on this, I know there are 15 parties. I want to check the details. Now these are 15 parties who have purchased. Now if you see, what are the date? Sale date is 17th April. Even they are paid on 19th October. Okay, so which means in this case, in all the cases, we got only parties where we already received the money, but they are paid after nearly 6 months. So I get to know who are the parties who are paid by delay. Now, other cases where we don't have blanks, which means we don't have the receipt date, which means they're not paid at all. For that also, I can do a computation using the current date. Okay, now this is the next case which I want to check. Okay, now let's come pick up one more case where what I'd like to do is let's pick up an interesting case. I got this format data where I got this, let's say the PAN data, the TAN data, etc. Now, if you see here, in this, I got the GSTN, PAN, PAN number, TAN name. Okay. What I'd like to do is, let's see, we'll perform different types of tests in this. First thing, I want to verify whether GST based on the pattern, whether this is correct. So I have a function here. I go to templates, validate GSTN. Let us minimize this. Yeah, now I got this. Now, if you see here, I go and select GSTN. Okay, this is what I got. Now, based on the number, it's like I'm able to get the complete horoscope. I can get the state code. I can get the associate type. Now, for example, here, there is a particular logic in which the GSTN has been designed. I can get all this information at one go. Okay, I select this particular associate type. Okay, I also say display the name of the state. Now, just see, for all this data, I also want to find which are the numbers which are valid or which are invalid. I say okay, or I do, let's do one at a time to pick which are the numbers which are invalid. Okay, when I say okay, now you see in a few seconds we got there are 25 numbers which are invalid, which means now what is the reason for this invalid? I also know that these are invalid length based on the particular number. I also know that these are invalid length. Now it also tells me there is a last number which is the check digit. Based on the logic, I also know these are the invalid check digit. So how many numbers are there which are because of the invalid check digit? So you see here there are 11 accounts. Now this is how I am able to get the, which means I am doing 100% verification of the GSTN based on this. Now there are also other software we can validate online for whether the GST number is valid. That's a different thing. Here I'm saying I got this data which is already available. Now based on this, I want to verify whether data is invalid, the GSTN is invalid or not. Not only that, I'm also able to get the assessee validation, which means based on the particular number which has been given, whether that is a company or not. Here I want to pick up the company and see whether the number they've given is correct. Okay, it's a company. Now if you see here in all this case, now this Gautam Jewelers is there. I'm not sure it's a company, but they're actually classified as a company. The number they've given is pertaining to a company. So in that case, does it mean because it's a company, actually they should have this suffix called as limited or private limited. Okay, this is how we're able to get. Similarly, it's a firm. I'll be able to get the information about the firm. Now here, if you see, there is a mistake clearly, which is apparent from the records. And it's a firm. they actually given the number. It's a private limited company where the number they're given is for a company. As per the number which is given, it actually belongs to a firm. But the company name they are given is the name of a company. So in this case, which means they are not given the correct GSTN. Okay, now let's come back again, perform this once again. Now these are very simple. If you see here, I just have this validate GSTN. Here, what did I pick? I picked up the GSTN. Okay, now here I'm going to select everything, the name, and when I say display on both, I say this. Now in this case, what it tell me based on the number, it also pick up and tell me, okay, what is the state to which this particular company belongs. Okay, 247 numbers. Okay, now if you see, I also get to know what is the assessee validation. Okay, what is the dealer type, whether it's valid or invalid. Okay, also what is the state to which it belongs based on the number they have given. So this I can do, check whether the number, based on the number it's picked up. I can also go and verify from the records whether the number is given correctly, the state is also given correctly. So here itself I want to find out the invalid. I'll be able to pick up the invalid at one go. Okay, this is how I can validate the GSTN. Same way I can also validate the PAN number. Let's do for the PAN number. Okay, I picked up the GSTN itself again. Let's come back to the PAN number, validate patterns. Find there are so many things to do. I'll pick only one example because I want to cover other things also. See here we have got the PAN. I want to view the pattern. I can view the pattern. This tells me the logic, how this particular company PAN is actually numbered. Okay, so here if you see P, what does it represent? P means individual. Like that you got for each of this, what does it represent? Okay, now whether this logic has been embedded inside the software through which the validation is done. Now I should be able to get the complete horoscope of the company. Okay, this is the complete assessee type. From the PAN number, I'll be able to get the complete assessee type. Not only that, whether the number is valid or invalid. Now let's pick up this. The same thing I can do for TAN. Now here you see, there are 246 number totally in this particular sheet. Now it could be 246 or it may be 20,000, it doesn't matter. The only thing is it's 20,000, it may take a little more time. Now here if you come, here you see, I get the complete list, what is the assessee type. Now how did I find the assessee type? Based on the number which is being given here, the PAN number, the software has computed what is the assessee type. Not only that, it also tells me the pattern, based on the pattern, whether it is valid, based on the assessee type also, whether it is valid. Okay, now if you see, based on the assessee type, I want to check whether it is valid or not. Now I can get to know these are invalid based on the assessee type. Okay, for example, here if you see, it's an individual. Okay, this number is invalid. Here it's a company, they're given to the company, but it's actually an individual. So I'll be able to pick up here also company, they're given the assessee type number which has been given is individual. So this is how I can do a verification based on this. Now let's say I want to perform one more test based on this. I want to find a pattern based on the length. Okay, so there is one more function here. This is another case where I want to find out based on the format. Okay, based on the format, let's say I got this GSTN, I show the field length. Okay, I say okay. Now see what will happen. Now it acts here. If you see here, it gives me based on the field length, I'll be able to know what is the field length which is available. Then I know which are the numbers which are incorrect based on the field length. And this I can apply to anything. For example, let's say I'm doing a bank audit based on the account number. It's supposed to be 11-digit numeric. I can pick up which are the accounts which are not conforming to the bank number. It can be our employee ID within the company. So I'll know where are the exceptions. Okay, this is how I can do the PAN number. This is what I showed you. Now let's pick up one more case study now. And this is pertaining to, let's say, the sales with items. Here we have got this file, which is the sales with items. Now, if you look at this particular, let's just perform the statistics to get a perspective of this particular data. Now, there is no use of doing for the next case study pertaining to sales, which I'm taking. I want the total of the sales amount and the units sold, and these are statistics which are available. Okay, I'll say okay. This should be quickly able to give me the statistics for this particular data. I'm just giving you a quick overview of the information. Now here, if you see, I got the average of the positive record, number of null records, all this particular information. I get maximum value is in the sales amount and also the minimum value. Okay. Similarly, I want to get the information about the, let's say, details. I want to pick up the column statistics. I want to pick up the information pertaining to the date. I go to the date. I got the sales data. Now here I'm going to say select all date statistics. I'll say OK. Now this should be able to give me all the date related statistics. Now just imagine this, if you're doing in Excel, how much time do you take to do this in Excel? Whereas here you're able to get this at one glance. I come to the date field. Now if you see here, I get the cutoff concept. The first earliest date is 1st April. The last date is 31st March. Total number of transactions in this case is 6670 and gives me the total number of records as per each of the days in the month and also as per each day of the week. Okay, there's one more function where I can get detailed analysis. I'll come to this a little later, or I'll perform this right now. Let's say I want to do further analysis based on this. I come to analysis and there is a function called MIS. Now you can see the difference between what you get in MIS and what you get in the statistics. Now here I want to find out based on the sales amount and just look at the sales amount only. I want to find out the MIS, which means I want to find out what are the sales. I want to find out based on day of the week. Okay. Is it only day of the week? Only day of the week. Okay. Here, let's say I'm doing an audit for this particular sales. I want to compute day of the month. I can also do day of the month. Now here, if you see, I get the complete information. For each day of the week, what are the total number of transactions? I want to see on which date the sales is the highest. I can just do it through a single sort I can get. So it looks like Saturday, the number of transactions, and also in terms of value, the lowest. On what day is the highest? So you see Friday seems to be the highest. In terms of the count, on what day is the lowest? Saturday is the lowest. Highest seems to be on Friday. Okay. This is how I can get the inference. Now, same thing. Let's say I want to do the same function. I am coming to analysis. I am coming to MIS. Now here, I want to find out the total sales amount and I want to find out based on the monthly. Let's say I'm doing an audit. Let's say tax audit or GST audit. I want to pick up the sales based on the month. I just say month wise. Now this will compute the total amount based on the month. See here, I got this complete data for each of the months. I'm able to get the complete list of the sales which has been made for each of the months. Not only that, I'll also know based on the ascending and descending order, October seems to be the month on which the sum of the sales is the highest. I can also get a visual perspective on what day the sales is the highest or the lowest. Okay, so this is how I can get the MIS. Now this is the sales data I had. Now let's make it a little more complicated. We already know that now here, if you want to find out one more thing, I want to classify, I want to find out what are the sales as per the dealer. I can just use the classify function. I want to find out based on the dealer, I want to see product wise what he has sold. I can use the same classify and then group by based on the product type. I can get this. I can also do further group by based on the color. I can also get this. Now what I would like to do is I would like to know what are the sales as per each unique value of sales. Now here I can go to summarize. Now probably I've covered about 10 to 12 functions only now. Now you see the perspective which you can get from the analytics. I got the sales amount. Okay, this is what I wanted. What is that I want to pick in this information? Based on sales amount, I want to pick up the total amount. So what will it give me? It will give me for each unique type of sale, what are the count and what are the total sales. Now if you see here, for each unique 35,000, how many times it has been sold? 3,50,000, 3,25,000, how many times it has been sold? So I get the complete perspective. Now let's say I'm applying this for the cash receipts or the cash payments. I'll be able to pick up, okay, how many times I made this particular payments. Now if you see 1,19,000 seems to be 401 times, 2 lakh rupees, 344 times it has come. So these are the sales pattern which you can find out. Now this is where I said we can provide validation to the management. Now this would be interesting insight for the management. Based on this, you can say, okay, what are the type of sales which is happening and which volume is happening, how many times. Okay, now let's come to one more interesting thing. Now I want to perform this segregation of duties. You remember we talked about the control framework. I got the sales. Now if you see in the sales, I also got the user ID, okay, which means each user ID, I got one more file called the sales authorization limit. Now if you see here, for each user ID, I got the limit which is there. What I would like to do is I would like to verify whether all the transactions which have been passed are within the limit, or which are the transactions which have exceeded the limit. Okay, so what do? I have a ready-made function. I can do multiple ways. I am just showing you one simple function. There is a function called authentication check. If you have to do it in Excel, what will you do? You have to apply the filter, do a this one VLOOKUP, join that, and based on that, individually you are able to pick up. Now, let's say there are about 100 items or 200 parties. It will be very difficult to do. Okay, I pick up the first file. Next, I pick up the second file. Okay, which is the sales auth limit. Now it tells me user ID. I've got the user ID. Step 4, I select the user ID, and I want to pick up the user ID equals user ID. That's done. Next thing, I want to pick up the sales amount. Okay, step 7 is I pick up the authorization limit, and I want to pick up the greater than. Very simple, right? Now, based on this, it should be able to audit all the 6670 transactions and tell me which are the transactions which have been done beyond the authority. Now, if you see here, there are totally 89 transactions in this case where the transactions are beyond the authorized limit. Now, if you see here, in this case, the sales amount is 85,000, whereas this person's limit was 80,000. I want to pick up all the transactions as per the user. I just say I want to pick up transactions SB. I'll be able to pick up all the transactions. I find he has passed actually 28 transactions, where his limit, what transaction entered, is beyond the limit. Now, just imagine doing this Excel and now doing it in data analytics software. You're able to do it in a few clicks. And this is the power of the data analytics. I've just picked up a few case studies to show you how it is possible for you to do data analysis. Now let's pick up the one more last case, which is the procurement. I'll take about 5 minutes for this. Now, if you look at this particular data, I've got the PO date, PO number, vendor code, all these things. We can do multiple types of analysis in this. Okay. Now here, let us do one function. Let's say one of the things I want to find is what are the transactions of purchase which have been made and where the rate varies to a significant amount. Okay, which means I want to find out for each material code, okay, what is the unit price and what is the variance in unit price. For that, I use a function. I have a function called relative size factor. Now here we did this for this particular function. We used it for one Amazon reseller who had about 9 lakh transactions in 9 months. Okay, I've got this. Now here, it's very important to select what is that you want. I want to select the material code or the material name. Okay, because both are same, unless there is a difference here. And I want to select the unit price, which means what I want to find is for each material code, I want to find out the difference in the relative size factor. Let me get the result and show you. Now there may be 1000+ data here. I'll be able to get an insight between the first highest price and the second highest price and the ratio between the two. Now, if you see here in this case, I got this D86031 bought 94 times. And the first highest price, it was bought at 5124. The second maximum price 151. Now you see there is a variance of 33 times. Similarly here, if you see this actual price, second price is 70, whereas the first highest price is 700. Which means I'm able to pick up all the differences, the significant differences at one go for all the purchases which have been made. The management has told us to verify, this is the criteria, whether the purchases have been made as per the purchase policy. And let's say the purchase policy says the variation cannot exceed 10% or 15% of the price. So in this case, we find there are significant, in this case, you see the lowest is 1.18, which means the 18% difference in price. Okay, here you see the first is 133, the second highest is 113. Now let's say I want to find one more thing. I want to find the difference between the highest and the lowest price. Okay, now let's do one more function for this, which is called as the maximum variance factor. So in this case, what do I select? I select the material code. Okay, now I can go and select the unit price. Now let's say I want to do based on the vendor wise. I can also group it based on the vendor wise. So vendor wise for the material code, I can find out the price difference. Okay. So this is what I said, inferring insight from information. We can get a lot of valuable insight from this information, and this is what you can provide to the management and say where there are differences. Now here, if you see in this case, 5124, you see here the lowest price actually is 31.2. Okay, this 700 actually the lowest price they got for is 31.2. I want to see this data. I just double click. I'll be able to get this information. Okay, now here if you see in this case, I'm able to know which is the item. Now if you see, this gives me the complete pattern of the purchase for this particular product. So it looks like they bought for 5124. How many quantities they bought? 151, how many quantities they bought, and the normal price seems to be 31. So it means in this case, these are the 4 types of purchase which have been made at a very differential high price. And this also tells me the vendor, and I can also know who is the person who has placed the order and which location it has been bought. Now this becomes the irregularities. I can download this, I can save this in Excel and do further analysis as required. So this is just a quick overview of what I wanted to show you when I want to perform data analysis. Let's come back to this particular sheet, which I want to showing you. Now here, if you see, this is what we have. Now, if you look at this function, there are about 390 functions. I just picked up some examples of functions which I want to show. Let me show you one last function before we close. What I want to show you is, let's say I got this inventory list. I got this inventory list. Okay, let me come and see where is the inventory list. Aging to field we got. I got this inventory list. Yes. Now, if you see here, the company has given you a list of all the inventory they have at the end of this year, and this for the audit for the financial year end 31st March 20. And they told you this is the inventory with the purchase date they got. Now you want to draw an analysis and pick up year wise. I want to know, okay, what are the inventory which is available? Total inventory I know is about 214, 10, 165. Okay, which means 2 crore 14 lakhs, 10,165 the total inventory. So what I do in this particular case is I do what is called as aging. I go to aging. Now, based on the aging, I should be able to get an understanding. I have got the purchase date. Okay, minimum date is given as 3/4/2020. Aging date, I'll just go and change because I'm doing it as on 31st March 20. I change this to 31st March 20. Automatically it picks up the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 1093, which means there is an inventory which is lying for more than 1093 days. And it has given the increment of 30 days. Let's say I change the increment to 45 days. And I say autofill. Now this picks up the information. I've got all this. And I say, okay, I can get the aging summary or the aging details. I am interested in the summary. Now this gives me, now see for each bracket of data, it's able to give me between 0 to 45, how many number of inventories are available. Now, if you see here, the highest one. Now here you see 1035 to 1093, there are 3 items and the total value is 76,840. Now here, if you see between 900 to 945 days, we have got 3 items, which is 3,06,900. So it means I am able to get at one glance the complete analysis of the inventory, which would have taken me many years, many days or many hours to prepare in Excel. Whereas here in data analytics, I can do it much more very, very quickly. So this was just to give you a perspective of how you can do analysis using the data analytics software. So what I showed you was probably about 20 functions. Like that, there are about 300 plus functions, and primarily focus on data analytics. You got about nearly 190 functions which are there. Okay, this just to give you a flavor of what is possible in data analytics. Okay, can I also find duplicates? Yes, I can find duplicates. For example, let's say in sales with item. Now I want to find out the duplicates. Now let's see the difference between what I get duplicates in the Excel and in this particular software, data analytics software. Now if you look at data analytics, I want to do based on the invoice number and I want the summary. So in this case, for each type of duplicate, it also tells me how many number of times it has come. See, there are 3 blanks, 134, 1034, how many times it has come. I'm able to get a complete perspective of this particular data. Okay, this is what is possible. I can also find out uniques. All these things are possible in data analytics software. So you also find that it's very simple to use, because when adding to software, if you know how to use Excel, you can also use the data analytics software. Okay, with this, I'll close this case studies. Now you see that this I've just given a quick flavor. Actually planned to cover about 40, but I think we have been able to cover only about 20. But I've given you a quick flavor of what is possible through this. Okay, now I also want to show you in this case, if you see here, I got this the different functions. One other thing I want to show you is, let's say this rerun. When I click on rerun, it will be able to, all these functions, what I have got will be available. Not only that, I can use auto rerun, and then I can select a list of functions and perform them, and I also save it as a template. Okay, it also captures the parameters I've used when I perform the functions. It also gives me the usage statistics. So it means I have got auto documentation of all the functions which are done. I got an audit log, which means let's say all the activities are done in this file. I'll be able to get a complete list of all the functions with the time. This is what I said is the documentation feature of data analytics. because the data analytics software is specially designed with the analytics perspective in mind. Now refresh, I can perform the last perform function once again. Now let me close this Excel file. Now there is 2 minutes I'll take for closing the presentation. There's a few ideas which I want to convey. So I said, as CAs, we have got the knowledge, the business inference, and the insight. Now we should be able to apply this to the data, and based on that, now you see here, I got this particular raw data. On this, use my tools and techniques. Now what do I get? I should get the insights. Now this what is the publication IASB talks about. So all this which I talked about is applying thought to technology. Okay, so what are the action points you can take from here? So you say when you audit for purpose, not for regulation. Users require information for making decisions. So this is where you should be focused on. Information required is intelligent, interactive in real time, especially in the digital world now. Now you need to think digital and look at how we can add value to the client and enhance digital competency and be a creative problem solver. And that's where you can be productive, more productive, and use IT. This broadly what I want to cover. Now I am coming to the last part of the story, which I remember in the Excel file, which I told you. Now, what is the action we took? Now you've heard about all this. Okay, what is the action you're going to take based on this? Now let's look at what is the action which each of this person, if you remember, we talked about the 4 persons were there. This is the last part of my story. Now we have got Dhritarashtra. Now we know he spoke only one sentence in complete Bhagavad Gita, which means as far as he is concerned, we don't know what he did at the end of this. As far as I remember, based on what I've heard, he didn't react, he got angry and went away because he did not get any insight from the Gita which he heard, because he was not listening actively, he was only listening, he was a negative listener. Now, if you look at another interesting perspective, you look at Arjuna, let's look at what did he do. Now, if you look at Arjuna, if you come to the end, now let's see what he did. So he says, your grace, my delusion is destroyed, I have gained knowledge, my confusion with regard to body and Atman dispelled, and I shall obey your command. So he's understood the knowledge which was given, and based on that, he decided to fight the battle. He fought the battle and he won the battle, which means that's what is action oriented. Now, if you look at Sanjaya, what he did, he also heard everything. Okay. Now, if you look at Sanjaya, he's an interesting character. At the end of it, what does he say? Now, if you see here, he said, I had this wonderful dialogue, all the story by grace of Guru, I had this most secret knowledge, all these things. He says, O king, by repeated remembrance of this marvelous sacred knowledge, but I am thrilled at every moment, recollecting again and again that marvelous form of Krishna. I am greatly amazed, rejoice over again and again. So he is lost in the beauty of the knowledge. What is the action he took? And it says, wherever is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, and where was Arjuna, the archer, there will be everlasting prosperity, victory, happiness, and morality. This is my conviction. Okay, all this what he got is in the knowledge domain. What is the action he took? He took nothing. He was only interested in listening and repeating what has been heard. Now I want to come back and ask you the question, what type of a listener are you? Now we have spent nearly 2 hours of your valuable time going through this. Now, based on the ideas you got now, what type of a listener you are? Are you going to be like Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana? Duryodhana, he didn't do anything. I don't know whether we heard. But most important is, you will be like Sanjaya. It's an interesting lecture, you can say, and then go away. Or will you be like Arjuna? So what is important is that we should see how best we can apply this knowledge practically. Okay, with this, I'll close my presentation and stop this sharing.